Hello! Today we're going to transform some multi-dimensional data sets into single dimension. So you can see on the left here, we've got a sample data set. You can see that we have city and date, which are both dimensions. And then we have temperature and happiness index, which are both metrics. And we're going to try to transform these into what you see on the right here. These are averages of those metrics. And we use a little bit of TypeScript to help us out. Let's get started. All right, we have an empty file here. So let's go ahead and get started in returning something out of it. So let's export function get city averages. And right now we'll just return an empty array just to get started. All right, let's see what we need to do in this function. First, we'll need to combine the city data keyed by the city, and then we can take that result and average out the metrics. So I'm thinking that in this city data combination, we can just jam all the metrics into an array. All right, so get city averages is going to take an argument, data to convert, and that's going to be a type that we call city data, and that's going to be an array. This is going to be just like our fixture data. So if we take a look at our fixture data, we have city, which is a string, date, which is a string currently, temperature, and happiness index are both numbers. So let's go ahead and define these types here. Just going to copy each of these keys. Depending on your data set, you may actually have types for each of the cities if it has all the cities as a type or a union. But oftentimes it's going to end up just being a string, at least with the data sets I've worked with. So let's say type city data is equal to all of these, and let's go ahead and give each of these their type. So these top two were string, and these last two are number. Cool. So we have our first type, and now we have an array of these objects coming into our function. So from here, we can define a new function that will pass this data into, and this will be converting the array of city data into an object with where the key is the city and the values are the two metrics. That'll be an array of all the metrics for that city. Say function key by city, and that's going to take in our data to convert. We'll just keep it the same name so it's a little easier. That is city data array, and this needs to return the key by city. So we're going to say let's just call that key by city, and this is going to have the key be a string, which will be the city name. So let's copy those from up here. And these are going to be number arrays. So we're going to loop over each of the cities, and for every day we're going to just add those into the number array. So let's come back down to key by city. We're going to return that key by city type. And right now TypeScript is barking at us because we're not returning anything. So sometimes I like to just return an empty object just to keep that TypeScript happy for the time being. So let's just return this empty object here. Cool. TypeScript is happy for the moment, and now we can continue on. Here we want to reduce the data, so we'll say data to convert, reduce, and here we can define our converted, and here we can destructure the keys that we need. So this is going to be city, temperature, and happiness index. And then we'll open that up, and we want to make sure that we start with an empty object. We can cast this to key by city just to make sure that we have a solid type here. So TypeScript is unhappy there because we are not returning anything, so let's return converted, which is that empty object, and we should be good to go there. So let's get rid of that return down there. We can return our reduce. So from here, we just need to check to see if our current city is already in the converted object. So we can say if it's not in converted, then we add it with empty arrays for the metrics. So we'll say converted city, and this is going to equal our metrics. So you can see we get type ahead because we've already typed this object. So let's set this to an empty array, and then we should be able to add happiness index as an empty array as well. Now we can make sure our metrics get pushed into those arrays. Cool. So now we can set up converted city dot temperature, and that's gonna we'll just push in the current item, so that's gonna just be temperature. And we'll do the same for happiness index. There. So let's add this to our exported function here. So we'll say, we'll just call them city objects. Key by city. And we're going to pass in the data to convert. Now we have our city objects, and we're going to pass those into a new function to get the averages of all the metrics. Let's set up a new function, and we can call it average metric lists. Naming things is not my forte, but hopefully this is easy enough to follow along with. All right, so this function is going to take in the type that we just outputted from key by city. Let's just give it city data as the argument, and this is going to be key by city. Let's define a return type. So this is going to be our final type, and this is what we would like our exported function to return as well in the result at the beginning. So let's call this one city averages, and in here we're going to have a city, which is still a string. We'll have temperature, which is a number, and happiness index, which is also a number. Now we could reuse some of these types. We have quite a few that we can pull from. So we could just say city averages equals pick, and then we're going to grab city data and 3 of those values, or those keys. So city, temperature, or happiness index. That's the same as what we had before. And let's make sure that we return that out of here. That's going to be an array out of this function. And let's also make sure that we return that from this function. Cool. Let's return an empty array just to keep TypeScript happy for the time being. So here we can use object entries to map over the object, the key by city object. So let's set up object entries. This ends up returning an array of arrays from our object, where the key and the value are item 0 and item 1 in each array. So we're going to say city data. And now we map over these. We can actually destructure these. So the first item in the array is going to be the key, which is city. And the second will be the values. So these are going to be temperature and happiness index. And now we want to return an object. So we can return city, which is the key and the value. And we'll have temperature, which now we need to figure out the average of the temperature, because temperature in this entry is an array of numbers. So let's go define a function to figure out the averages. So we'll just call it average. It'll take in a number. Let's call it a number set. That's going to be a number array, and we'll return a number from that. So we want to loop over this set. Let's say number set dot reduce, and then we have our total, current. So we need to add all these values up. So we'll say a plus b. We'll start with 0. This is going to be divided by the length of the number set. So we'll say number set dot length. This looks pretty good. This may give us more decimal places than we want. So to define the number of decimal places, we can use toFixed, and we'll set it to 1 decimal place. Now you can see TypeScript is unhappy here because toFixed actually returns a string, so we have to make sure that this is wrapped in number, and that'll make sure that that string is converted into a number. So let's use this as our function here to calculate the temperature average. And we can duplicate this for happiness index. And now we can return this map instead of our empty array. And that should give us our output. So we can just say return city objects. Let's see if this all wired up correctly. And hey, there we go. We see the same numbers that we saw at the beginning. Let me know if you have any questions. This is just one of many ways. So thanks for following along. Talk to you next time.